my sweet peas and sugar dumplings. Welcome to another episode of Talk and Tea with Auntie with me, ShiningNathan, your Gay Auntie. And today we have a very interesting and special topic. We're going to talk with a very wonderful someone, which is a topic you may not have thought of, though you may have heard of and you may know of. And it's a 2-for-1 special. We'll be discussing LARPing and GIS. Do I know what the acronym of GIS means? Absolutely not. But that is why we have Chi or Christina here with us today to explain and tell us about herself. Welcome, Christina.
Welcome. How are you?
I am fantastic, my love. So tell me a little about yourself. How old are you, baby?
Well, I'm about 39, which doesn't seem even remotely possible. And I've been doing GIS for almost 20 years, and I've been doing LARPing for a little under 5.
And LARPing is fantastic, but I want to know what GIS. I've known you for a while, but I've never known what the acronym means.
Okay, so GIS is Geographic Information Systems.
Oh, really?
Yes, so it is the marriage of database, intelligence, and cartography.
Ooh.
Because everything is somewhere.
Yeah.
So that's what GIS helps with. It's also called geospatial or geospatial intelligence.
Okay.
That's another phrase that's used. I use it in a commercial industry.
Mm-hmm.
So I help track assets, demographics, anything that can help the business be more profitable and more effective. And also in a way that, like, any sort of project that has a where question, like
geographic, where are we going to place this thing based for a certain demographic?
Right.
Okay.
So, like, for example, the company I work for has an emergency operations center. And so we have to know which stores might be closed, which ones may be out of power, and what kind of resources one would need so that the store could open again. So my department has apps that we create that can help the people that are actually in the field. By field, I mean in the stores, and so that they can do their jobs well.
Oh, that is fantastic. What took you into this field? Was this something you wanted to do growing up, or was it something you fell into?
It was sort of something I fell into. When I was in high school, I needed another credit to graduate, and I was generally sort of smart in anything. Not to toot my own horn, but I mean, like, nothing really challenged me enough that I knew what I wanted to do. Mm-hmm. There was a class on GIS that was getting taught by my favorite teacher. And I took it simply just because she was my favorite teacher. Ended up liking it, went to university for it, and I've been doing it pretty much ever since.
How many years have you been doing it now?
Yeah, it's like almost 20. I think it's 18.
Oh my God.
I know, it's a lot.
And what things have you mapped? I guess mapping, right? In a way?
Right. So before I was where I'm at now, I used to work for the water department in Corpus Christi.
Uh-huh.
So that was a lot of mapping of hydrants and valves and pipes and like that. I'm probably the only person you know who has opinions about fire hydrants.
You like your tea?
Oh, that's nice.
It's fermented grape juice.
You know, it's the best kind.
It comes from the Provence of Cusco.
Sure.
Yeah, it's rather And so you have always been, I've known you for a while, shocking that I know her, but you've always been somebody that achieves, and if they don't think they can do it, they figure out how they can do it. And was there a point in the GIS career where you hit maybe a roadblock in growing in your career path?
Oh, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So GIS is one of those fields where it can be used in a lot of different industries
Mm-hmm.
in a lot of different ways. So it is sort of a case of spoiled for choice.
Okay.
So once you sort of get the basics of how to do the profession and just understand the science about when you bring data in, what's that look like, it all just becomes points, lines, and polygons.
Okay.
And so trying to figure out, okay, I can kind of do anything. How do I find that thing I actually want to do?
Mm-hmm.
And it's a lot of trial and error and listening to your gut, as well as just being open to learning. You're constantly learning. There's always new technologies, new methodologies, and just allowing yourself to try and fail at things and then get up and try again.
And was there ever, because you said you work in commercial, did you transition from working in a water department, was there a trial and error significantly when transitioning to a corporate sector?
So probably the biggest thing from going from a public entity to a private entity is, as a public entity, so much of your work is actually pushed out to the public.
Okay.
Right. So not only is my work accessible, but it is part of my job to inform the public about where their water sources are, where their clean water is coming from, those kind of things. Then to switch to private, especially in retail, where so much is played close to the vest, where I have met other cohorts, other GIS people who are in the same industry and are a competitor for my company, and I know everything about his wife and his kids and his workout routine. I have no idea what he does to his day.
So are there different methodologies or practice, like you have your way of doing it and somebody else for another competitor may have their own way? Is that something, or is it like we all have the same recipe, different tools?
A little bit of so there's certain methodologies that are always going to be the same no matter where you go. And that's just statistics and the way that you store data, the way that you classify things. Like those things are sort of universal. It's how you implement those tools that could be different from each organization, right? So like for the company I work for, when we are looking at demographic data, we may be looking at different variables than another competitor might be looking at. Right? So typically a GIS person for retail is somebody who typically works in the real estate department when it comes to like purchasing new land. And they say, okay, our core customer looks like XYZ. And XYZ people live over here. So please go buy land over there and build over there. Whereas the company I work for goes, okay, we build land here. Now who lives here? And then they change the store to fit who lives in the area.
What is something that people don't know that is a part of their daily lives that is specifically regarding GIS of a field that they don't even know?
Oh, absolutely.
What is something that they may know?
If you have ever been in a situation where you open up Google Maps and you ask it, Chinese restaurants near me, that's GIS.
Really?
Right. Because it is, there's a database of all the types of restaurants. They have variables about their hours, what they serve, all these kind of different things. It's location. And then you're asking it a question. Where are they near me? Which is the geographical aspect of it.
So basically, most things and apps that people use nowadays that requires, and it is was created in part through a GIS person.
More than likely. There was at least somebody amongst the
Have you ever
team.
seen an instance where you like a GIS person was not involved in this conversation?
Yes, I've been in places that I don't understand why there's not a GIS person. One of the earlier examples is when I was still in school. I got an internship. I use the word very loosely. We were paid to make maps for the bus system in Corpus Christi while I was still in school. And so went to go meet with the individual who was in charge of making all of the maps, the brochures that say where all the stops are and, all that good stuff, and was asking him about what system he used. He literally made those maps on MS Paint.
Are you serious?
Yeah, no, they were arbitrarily drawn. There wasn't any real good reference between like the stops.
How far they were from each other.
Right. And even in the map like itself, right, he might have one stop and another stop that was really close together and then another stop that was further down here. But in reality, that reference is not what it was
This
at
one was
all.
only 10 feet away, the other one 6 miles away.
Yeah, and when you get out there, there's 10 miles between the first two and 5 miles between the last one. Like,
and what is the education level that you need to get something that is very specialized in this field? Or
Actually,
there's also certifications.
That's actually really interesting in this, is that there is opportunities at every level of this, right? So you can have no knowledge of GIS at all and start taking professional classes and start learning the skills.
Beautiful.
And there's from there's levels all the way up, right? So there's associate's degrees, there's bachelor's, there's master's, there's doctoral, obviously, and you can find jobs that fit any level of that education.
Really?
Right. So you could be a GIS technician, which is the lowest level of knowledge that you need, and that's the person who's going to be intaking data, from either hard sources or digital sources, and putting that in the GIS, identifying it, giving it variable names, kind of doing the grunt work, right? Of getting all of the pieces into the system. And then you'll have an analyst who takes those pieces and queries out questions and gets answers. And then you'll have directors and managers, and you'll have developers who can go in behind the programming and develop automation. There's administrators, because a lot of the GIS work nowadays is shared virtually through apps and all this. So you need administrators who can handle the firewall protections and the licensing and all of that. So there's just space for
all levels of education.
For all levels of education. Yeah.
That is so actually really, really cool. Hello, my lovers, and welcome to another Your Gay Auntie's Tips and Tricks for Thrifting. And here we are at 1604 in Blanco, again here at San Antonio, Texas. And the biggest tip I can always give and suggestion is to look for the possibilities. Unlike in your ex, looking for the possibilities in clothing is always one of the biggest things you can do, because you can cut down, you can readjust, you can alter yourself, make it into a crop top or whatever. Have fun with it, and don't be scared if it don't look the way you want it to look right now, because you can dye it, you can cut it up, and you can sew it, and you can even belt it if you are not handy in that way. So look for the possibility in a garment. So if you see something that has a pattern you like, but it's too big, think about belting it when you wear it. Think about making it into off the shoulder, turn it into a crop top, turn it into a tank top. Have fun, and as always, I love you, darling. So who is the person behind the GIS professional we see before us today? You are getting close, you're 39?
39.
39.
Yeah.
What are your interests, hobbies, and how have they evolved over time?
So one of my interests, and part of the reason I've come here, is talking about LARPing, right? Which LARPing, when I first heard about it, of course, I thought of it as being this silly thing that people who couldn't connect with other people would do. That is not at all what this is. LARPing
what is LARPing to people who may not know?
LARPing is live action role play.
Okay.
So it's sort of the idea of being a character in a movie, right? So you have an environment, a scene, or a weekend, or however it's structured, and there's a storyline that you're going through, and you make a character that's interacting with that storyline. And it could be a really involved, in-depth storyline. There's some really great work coming out there. Germany has a lot of LARPs that are really about like exploring different parts of history.
Ooh.
And being an individual who lived that life. And there's also fantastical LARPs, right? So I'm going to be doing a fantasy LARP, which has dragons and fantasy characters and all this. And it's like living a movie.
Yeah. Adult make-believe without the tabletop.
Right. And it's so like in tabletop, you would roll dice to be like, my character jumps over the river. In LARPing, you're only going to jump over the river if you could physically jump over the river. Like that's just.
Have you ever jumped over the river?
I have never jumped over the river. I've jumped in the river. It's landed on my face.
And what led you to LARPing? It sounds like it was a natural progression or something.
Well, so I had some friends who were doing it, and they had come back from an event, and they were talking about stories and things that they got to do, and they were just so excited about it that I was like, all right, I'll give this a whirl, see how I fit. So went to my first event, which turned out to be a zombie horror LARP.
Oh. Sounds like a good way to
Post-apocalyptic.
tip your toe into LARPing.
Yeah. So if it's going to be a thing, I do suggest some sort of post-apocalyptic for your first, like, costuming. Because it's very easy and very cheap to ruin clothes.
I've done it without even trying.
I know. So, you have a costume, you have, depending on your game, you may have fake weapons. And some games are more physical. So you may actually get into fights, and other games are more political or talking, or so you might, there might be subterfuge that you do as opposed to stabbing somebody in the back.
And which kind do you prefer?
It depends on my mood.
Do you prefer stabby stab?
Well, the fighting ones are fun, but I have bad knees.
Don't we all? Raise your hand if you have bad knees.
So I do enjoy, like, the vampire LARPs that are out there. You pretend to be a vampire, and that's a lot of subterfuge and a lot of, here, look at this hand. Well, this one's stealing your money. Like, that's a lot of fun to do. And it all, again, it all comes from the same place. It's just utilized in different ways.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
And what type of other, because you are clearly a professional in your field of extensive experience, what other professionals do you see doing LARPing?
Oh, you'd be surprised.
Really?
Yeah. There's a lot of people in the medical field are in LARPing, actually, which when you're in a very physical situation, knowing that doctors and nurses are there playing the game with you.
Wait, is there a cardiologist in the room?
There might be. There might actually be.
That's actually really cute, though.
Yeah. So I've not seen a situation where I say that there's any one profession that is more geared towards it, as much as you just be honestly surprised.
There's a wide range.
It's a wide range of people. You'll have people that are at the top of their professions that are in very serious roles who will come out and play to be a goblin.
Is there and I'm sorry to cut you off, is there an element of escapism to being able just to slough off this mundaneness for something more beautiful and fantastical?
I mean, I absolutely think that there's some people who come to it for an escapism. I myself like to be I come to it in this situation of I can play a character who has the knowledge and the resources to help others, which is something that we don't always feel in our real life.
Yeah.
Sometimes, especially the big problems, feel way beyond anything we can help with. So it's nice to go and play a story that's going to have a conclusion and feel like you can impact that conclusion.
That is fantastic. Yeah. And you've also always been very good at crafts. I know we recently had her wife, Eliza, on the show, and y'all are a very craft-heavy home, from my understanding.
We are.
And so has your crafting gotten so much better since you started LARPing?
Oh, absolutely. So I think some of the first things I ever made, like I said, was clothing with holes ripped into it, and just learning as you go along, and figuring out what you liked about something, what you didn't like about something, what was really hard to do, what was easy to do. And then there's communities all over the place. There's plenty of Discords and YouTubes and resources for learning how to do something that you previously didn't know how to do. And then again, it's back to the whole, you just got to try.
Yeah.
Just putting the effort in a little over time will get you there. And I would say that the things that I'm making now, I don't know if I could ever fathom that these would be the things I made when I started.
Fair. What, do you have anything to show us that you have made?
I do, actually. So this is a set of horns that I made for my friend. So she plays a tiefling.
What's a tiefling?
Tieflings are from Dungeons and Dragons. And they are people who are part demon, part some other race. And they can have different types of storylines about how maybe a parent made a deal with a demon, and when they were born, they have these demonic traits. So this is 100% foam.
Look at this. Oh, and it's so light.
Yeah. So the story that's behind the broken horn is that her character and my character play sisters. My character is slightly older.
See it on the singular camera. Look at that.
So our characters are sisters. My character is slightly older. When our characters were children, we were playing King of the Mountain, and my character pushed her off of the big rock, and she broke her horn. So that's why there's this broken horn. And when I was in the process of painting it, I had a bit of brass paint. And so I thought it would be really cool is if the broken part, I made it look like it was oxidizing.
Oh my God.
So that's why this little area here is getting this green splotchy.
And how long did that piece take you to make?
It actually took me a couple of iterations. So
Okay.
the first set I made, I absolutely hated. They were the two didn't match. While one was way too big, so I had to remake it. I think I remade the whole thing about 3 times, and I painted this at least 6.
Really?
Just because the first few times that I did it, I had a sort of an idea of what I wanted to look like, but I didn't know how to get there. So I sort of had to get the bad ideas out.
Yeah.
So that I could see what was working and what wasn't working. And then come back and be like, okay, I want to do this. I want to highlight that. I want to add this. I want to add that.
And so what are the components of, so what kind of foam, in case anybody out there wants to like throw their hand in it, what's the type of foam and the type of paint?
So this is actually sheets of the craft foam that you can get from Joann's. So
Okay.
it's the core of it is the kind of the thicker craft foam. Some Joann's have it, some don't. But then the actual different sections here is the thin craft foam that you can get in like the kids' art section. It comes in a big pack. They're multicolored.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all that is. And then it's painted in a mix of black paint and Mod Podge because that helps seal the foam because foam is porous.
Yeah.
So you have to put a coating on it to help make it solid.
Okay.
And then the little bottom here is just some leather, spare leather I had cut to shape, and then a headband.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
So overall, what, 2-3 weeks, a week?
I'd say probably about, outside of the ideation, trial and error.
Yeah.
If I had to make like more of these, it'd probably take me about 3 days.
Really?
Between the painting and the drying and the construction.
And then living life.
Yeah. Yeah.
So is there a current, like, I've seen some pictures of things that you've made that are bigger, shields and things. What is, now that you've been in LARPing, what is something you eventually want to get to make?
So the largest thing I've made so far has been a tree monster for a fantasy event that we're going to. And that is a head-to-toe outfit for a person where it's foam arms, foam legs, foam chest piece, big old foam headpiece, all carved bark, painted up. They will wear a ghillie suit underneath it. They've got a big old shield that's also covered in foam bark and fake plants and this whole thing. So that's the largest piece I've made so far. My next thing I want to make...
Yeah.
I want to make Cat Bus.
Cat Bus, Studio Ghibli.
Studio
Right?
Ghibli Cat Bus. My idea for this, because this game allows its highest tier of monsters, requires a motorized vehicle. So if I had infinite money, I would take one of the golf carts that can seat like 6 people.
Yeah.
Would take one of those, and then using foam and fake fur, would cover it to look like Cat Bus, would install a speaker in it and hook the speaker up to an iPad that has the Cat Bus sounds in it that the driver could hit, and you could drive
so
Cat Bus
cool.
around. And
It sounds like that would take a long time.
Yes.
And need a lot of transport.
Yes.
And so, talking about transport on these types of things, how much stuff do you need to take for a typical weekend of LARPing?
A typical weekend of LARPing is absolutely going to depend on the location that you're at.
Okay.
Right? So if I was doing the zombie LARP, for example, where we would have that weekend LARP was at a Girl Scout camp. And so I stayed in a unit that required a tent.
Okay.
So I had my own tent. They did have units that had cabins.
Okay.
Right? So it's a lot of the same idea of like backpacking, right? So you're going to have your big 3, right? Your sleeping, your clothes, your food.
I didn't know that. Okay.
So, again, it all depends, right? So if you're doing an event
Did you used to do Girl Scouts?
I used to do Girl Scouts.
We'll touch more on that later.
But yeah, so you're going to want to consider both your character needs, right? So the things that your character needs to do to play the character, but also your human needs.
Your actual,
like, what do I need to do to live through this and see Monday? Because I still gotta go to work.
Yeah.
To
pay for this hobby.
Right. So you're gonna want to, your sleeping situation, your food situation, your water situation, because a lot of LARPs, you're on your own on that.
Really?
Right. Because it's a game.
Yeah.
They're there to provide the entertainment and the structure for while you're there, but you're typically responsible for your own well-being.
Okay.
Yeah. So your first time at a weekend LARP, an overnight event, may be something close to camping.
Okay.
I would actually suggest that somebody's first time is to either try LARPing at like a convention.
Okay.
Because some of your anime conventions or your comic cons like that, they may have a one-shot LARP that's happening that'll be between 3 to 6 hours of. They will give you a predefined character. You'll get a little card that'll have who your character is, their backstory, if there is a backstory, any skills or any other extras. And you'll be given an overview of like what the topic is about, what you're trying to accomplish.
Okay.
And your character may have goals that they're trying to accomplish. And so that's one way to kind of dip your toes into it that doesn't require a lot of upfront investment.
That's fair. And before we get further into the further investment, once you hit a higher level, we're going to cut to our talent segment of Talking Tea with Auntie, where we invite talent guests like musicians, singers, magicians, and even stand-up comedians to come and show their talent. So we're going to cut to that segment now, and I hope you enjoy it, and we'll be right back with more conversation with Chi about Larping and her life. And we're back. I hope you enjoyed that. And we're going to continue our wonderful conversation with Chi. So we ended where we're talking about people want to dabble in, they have to go to a Comic-Con. But we're going to fast forward a little bit and return back to the steps of LARPing. And what is one of the more interesting things you've seen at a LARP?
Some of the more interesting things that I've seen in the LARP would include the costumes. Some of the costuming is just phenomenal. Also, the ability for storytellers to pull you in to a scene and make you really feel like you're in that environment.
Yeah.
Because the mind is a wonderful tool, and
sometimes
is surprisingly imaginative. And so even though you're out in the middle of the woods, you can still feel like you're in Hyrule or you're taking part in some grand epic.
And do you prefer fantasy over whatever else may be out there?
Fantasy is my current fixation, but that's not really
A fixation?
it's not really a preference either way. I think that all of them have
It's just a phase.
all of them have pluses and minuses, right? So right now, fantasy leans into my need to create, my need to sort of be fantastical, right? So grander than the ordinary.
But you already are grander than the ordinary.
Well,
Look at
thank
that hair.
I mean, so that's what fits me right now. That's not to say that that's going to be the only thing that I do, right? There is other ones that I would like to try. I've tried. I've helped with sci-fi before. That's sci-fi. The sci-fi one I find has a lot of, at least from the back end, there's a lot more lift that's involved because you need to really have a place that you can fake that futuristic look. Whereas like post-apocalyptic is much easier just to find any place and play the game. Same with fantasy. Fantasy, it's easier to just find something that you can kind of use, be like, oh, you're in the woods of some grand place, some fantastical world. Whereas like I helped NPC or non-playable character for a Shadowrun, which is a futuristic look. We actually used a paintball facility. We used one of their indoor facilities, and lots of fake walls and spray paint and neon lights, and we did that. So one of the things I do like about LARPs, and not all LARPs have this, is playing that non-playable character, that NPC, that person who comes out with the story. Like, I am the story hook. Hello, I'm the hook. Please follow me. And giving players opportunities to interact with me. Now, sometimes as an NPC, you're really just there for safety, right? Because something that you're going to do either may be emotionally taxing or could be physically unsafe if you're not paying attention. And then sometimes you're just there to throw wrenches into players' plans.
You do that in my daily life anyway.
Well, I come prepared.
How much does this hobby run you, Chief?
Well, for me currently, for this particular event, I probably spend in the thousands of dollars to do this.
I think we had this conversation, how much it would cost her to get a passport, and she was like, well, it's like expensive. I was like, how much you spend on this LARP?
You know what? I don't want to talk about how much I just spent on paint.
How much did you spend on paint? It's good. It's a perfect little fun topic.
I get the cheapest paint I could find, and I'm still probably spending hundreds of dollars in paint just because of how much I need and the different colors I require. It's just priorities in life, I suppose.
It's fine. I'm not saying anything. I'm just,
You're saying everything.
What am I saying? I didn't say nothing. I am a pillar of this community.
I can feel the judgment.
You're projecting your own frustration onto me.
I see how it is.
So it can be very expensive.
It can be.
Do you think the fantasy aspect of it's more expensive, or do you think all LARPs can be more expensive?
I think they all can be more expensive. The LARP community is really open to new players. So if you come in and be like, hi, I really want to play this game. I've never LARPed before. I have nothing. There will be people who will be like, okay, I've got spare things that you can borrow until you're in a position that you can bring your own stuff.
How big has your hoard become?
Well, I have a garage.
She has a garage, okay.
Yeah. So
it's all in the garage?
No, because the costumes are in the closets because the heat. I do not trust things sitting out there that long. But I have tried with some of my LARPs that are the the non-fantasy LARPs, the overnight ones. If it's a one shot or something like that. One of the things I do try to do is if I need a new costume piece, I do try to find something that I feel comfortable wearing on my day-to-day.
Okay.
Because typically these characters are just people.
Yeah.
They're not the sheriff of Nottingham. They're an accountant who's just trying to get, this drug deal through because their kid is in danger. Like that's the kind of thing.
Same in real life.
So sometimes they're just regular people in extraordinary situations.
Okay.
So what that allows me to do is either to use clothing I already have or to go and look for clothing that would work for both.
Yeah. And have you ever, this is going to be an interesting topic, have you used your GIS knowledge for your LARPing fun?
I have actually.
Really? Give
I
me
have.
an instance.
So on multiple occasions, I have drawn up maps for events, either an actual physical representation of the space we're in, or an otherworldly understanding of the space that we're occupying, right?
Okay.
So, like, I've made maps of where the tents are going to go for what we're doing, but I've also, if geographically, if we're supposed to be representing an area supposed to be mountainous, this is what that map would look like and how.
So you know how to physically draw and make a physical. How did you learn? Like, I didn't know people still did that.
Oh yeah, there's plenty of people that still do that.
Really?
Yeah, no, the cartography is very much still a needed skill.
And so you still just draw it.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
That's so wonderful.
When I was in college, I actually got extra credit points for doing handwriting classes.
Really? Mm-hmm. How good is your handwriting?
Terrible now. But once upon a time, it's fine. My handwriting is fine. But it was a thing because my education came alongside with land surveying, right? Or geomatics is what it's professionally called. And as a surveyor, your book that you take out with you, that you write your angles and your distances and everything, that's legal tender. Like, that's a legal document.
How?
So handwriting is very important.
I did not know
Make sure
that.
your sevens don't look like nines. That kind of stuff. So handwriting is, and that's just skills that lead to other skills, right? So having good handwriting, having that dexterity in your hands allows you to do more intricate art. Yeah.
And what is your favorite piece you've made so far? Not the biggest or grandest, but what is your favorite piece you've made so far?
Of all of the pieces I've made, probably one of my favorites is this absolutely ridiculous shield. It is about 4.5 feet in diameter. It comes, if I hold it normally, right, it goes from my shin to my nose.
Oh my God. What is it made out of?
Foam.
All foam?
All foam. It's different types of foam. There's big, thick.
So LARPing is run on foam?
I mean, it can be, especially if you're doing any kind of contact LARP. You want it to be as safe as possible. There's inherent risk in anything. And part of your job as both a player and behind the scenes is to mitigate that risk as much as you can, right? So we do that by making fake weapons out of foam, right? Or by, if you're striking an opponent, you do your best not to just hammer on somebody. You play it up, right? So you make the big motion, you make the big scene, but you're actually not hitting anybody that hard.
Yeah.
And this shield is just a big thing that I could bump somebody with it and they're going to be totally fine.
That is so cool. And so what is the LARPing community? I remember, I'll give this little anecdote. Years ago, I moved here to San Antonio about 8 years ago, and I saw some LARPers in the park at Breckenridge Park. And I was like, LARPers in the wild! Oh my God! So what is the community like?
So there's different types of LARP, right?
Okay.
So like the people that you saw in Breckenridge Park, they may not even consider themselves LARPers.
What would they consider themselves?
There's kind of a sports side of LARPing, which I know makes no sense. I will explain. So the people that enjoy the stick fighting, right, with the foam swords and all of that, there's ways to make those that they're a little more rigid. They're a little less play
Floopity.
and a little more structured.
Okay.
Okay. And so they will have sort of battles in the same sense of like fencing.
So would you consider, this going to be a side, would you consider the Civil War reenactors LARPers?
I would. They don't. But I do because it requires costuming, a storyline.
Mm-hmm.
You play a character.
I think so too. Snaps. I think it's SCA, Society for Creative Anachronism. Are they LARPers? I think they'd be mad if I said that.
I don't really think that they're LARPers in that they don't have a storyline that they're playing.
Okay, they're more like themselves living back then. I know they do great costuming. There's always drama with them.
There's always, well, it's the nature of people who are interested in these sorts of things. That they're interested in other people's lives. So SCA, I think, is closer to like historical exploration.
Okay.
Right? So it's keeping, it's got a lot of different purposes, but I think some of the things it does best is keeping historical skills in sort of the knowledge base of everybody, right? So helping those skills from not just getting lost to time.
Yeah.
I think it also does really well for helping people feel connected to the past, right? So they may research a time period or a person and just get more information about that era and be able to sort of learn those connections between how did we get from there to here.
Okay, I totally get that. And so I guess another question that's very interesting and fun. Every community has the creme de la creme of events. Like, what is the creme de la creme of events that exists within LARPing? I know you're going to a big one that's like a week long.
Yes.
Is there like, this is the place you have to go, but it's in Eastern Europe and it's like a 2-day LARP? Like, what is that event for y'all?
There is a very large LARP that happens in Canada.
Really? I mean, it makes sense. It's cooler.
So they actually have a dedicated site.
Really?
So a lot of LARPs in the United States don't really have dedicated sites where they can build structures. This one is. So it actually is several acres that they have full buildings with light and power and everything. And I think they've got several thousand attendees.
Oh my God.
I think it's called Bicanilli.
Bicanilli?
With a B. I think. I have to...
Leave it to nerds, you know? As a fellow nerd, I can say that.
But yeah, so that's probably one of the largest events in on this side of the hemisphere.
What about in the world?
There's Germany really loves their LARPs.
Really?
They really do.
I wouldn't have thought about the Germans.
I think it's unfair that the Germans can throw fantasy LARPs in actual castles.
I didn't think about that.
Yeah. And
we have forts?
They come over here and they're like, we're going to make some fake walls for your gates. Here's some canvas and some 2x4s, peasants.
We brought this. Enjoy. Are you doing it on a fort?
Yeah.
I never thought about that aspect, that they actually have real dang castles. That's disrespectful.
Isn't it?
That's disrespectful, really.
So, there is also a thing that I learned about fairly recently is that there's a LARP that's a LARP. Hold on.
Pause. I think we're getting Inception levels.
It's actually what it is. So it's commentary on the nature of LARP, right? So that's a thing that art does a lot.
Yeah.
Is at some point art
criticizes itself.
Criticizes itself. So that's actually what this LARP is is that you go in there playing a character that is a LARP NPC.
That would blow my mind. I don't think
It's layers.
I don't
layers.
I have depth, but I don't have that much depth in terms of, oh.
So your character is trying to organize other people while they're also trying to organize other people.
We got to be there by 5. No,
because the monster is going to show up at 5:30, and if we're not in position, yeah. Yeah.
I love that. I love that even the commentary on itself is wonderful.
Yeah.
And so, what is a LARPing character you eventually want to LARP? Before we wrap everything up, what is a LARPing character that you haven't played yet that you want to try to play?
So I would love the opportunity to play the big bad.
Mm-hmm.
I've played minions, I've played middlemen, I've played the big hero, I've played sidekicks. I've never really had the opportunity to play the big bad for the event, the criminal mastermind. Or
how do you get that opportunity? Do you ask? Do you put in for a pool or a lottery?
It will absolutely depend on the LARP that you're part of, right?
Oh, okay.
So the storytellers. You can, like anything, you set up relationships and you talk to people and you let them know, like, hey, this is a thing I would like to try. And they will let you know if they have a role that they think you would do well in, or willing to give you a chance on, or things like that.
Yeah, that's so cool. So to anybody out there, before we end, is there advice to people who want to join LARPing or start LARPing, or have always been intrigued by LARPing but are too, well, we know how society can be, about it? What advice would you give somebody out there in the world?
If you are a technical person or enjoy being on the internet, I very much suggest going to Discord and finding LARP communities in Discord. Like I said, there are tons of people who are very excited about new players who will reach out to you and will answer any questions, no matter how ridiculous they are, or how ridiculous that they're legitimate questions, but you feel like it's a silly one. And the internet is such a great place to help us all connect. And that's just where you could start. And it seems like such a niche community that it feels like it should be hard to find.
Yeah.
But the reality is that people want to create things.
Yeah.
And so if this is something you're interested in, there are other people around you who are also interested in it. So you just have to reach out and look for them.
That's wonderful. I love that. Well, that is our time for today. Thank you very much, Chi. It was a pleasure. And as always, I want to thank all of my viewers and subscribers here who are enjoying this episode. So stay tuned for our next episode, honey. And if you enjoyed this content, please feel free to consider becoming a patron on my Patreon for as low as $3 a month at patreon.com/ShiningNathan. As always, I love you. You take care of yourself and go out there, have fun, and create. And drink your water. Take care, baby.